It's time for the SP and Bushy Show. Here's your hosts, SP and Bushy.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 8 of the SP and Bushy Show. Two lifelong friends who finally decided to start a podcast together. I'm SP. He's Bushy.
Hi, everybody.
Awesome,
Let's
Bushy.
do it.
How are you feeling?
I'm feeling pretty good. Again, Thanksgiving is this Thursday, so ready to eat some turkey and really watch some crappy football games to go along with it. So I'm very thankful for that.
Yeah, I'm obviously very thankful to have the opportunity this year to still watch those games and to still be able to celebrate. Once again, there was a comment actually on our podcast last week about the green chili on mashed potatoes comment that I made last week. I'm still looking forward to that, even though it's going to be a smaller scale Thanksgiving celebration with just my fiance and I. We're still looking forward to Thanksgiving. What is your number one Thanksgiving food?
My number one Thanksgiving food actually is not a food actually, but a drink. So my grandpa makes this concoction. He calls it green slime, and it's something that he has always made as far as I've been alive. And it's a concoction of green sherbet ice cream and 7-Up. And sadly, he passed away earlier this year. But I want to keep the tradition alive. I have green sherbet, and I got 7-Up to go with that as well. So I'm ready for the green slime. It's actually really good.
It sounds really good. My condolences on your loss, and that's awesome that you're going to be carrying on that tradition for him.
Absolutely. He's a great he was a great guy, and I miss him dearly. But yeah, it's just something I want to keep the tradition alive and keep it on for the next generation.
That's great. That's how these traditions live on, man. So yeah, it's great that you're doing that once again. My condolences on your loss. Well, it's always a rough one. I know I lost my grandfather. Actually, I believe it's coming up on 3 years now. Here on Christmas Eve, so will be 3 years. So I know how tough that is, and I mean it's obviously a tough situation, but it's great that you're carrying on the tradition.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's going to be interesting this year as far as with COVID and all that, and we'll see how it goes.
We certainly will. Another tradition that's obviously a common tradition on Thanksgiving, the Lions and the Cowboys both playing on Thanksgiving. Are you a fan of this tradition, or should we open it up to other teams?
I'm a fan. It gives the Lions a bone. It gives them a chance to be on national TV each year. The Lions are really probably one of the saddest franchises in probably the history of professional sports, really. And, just to give them a bone and be like, hey, here you go. We'll give you a national televised game. And it's always great, too, because the game always starts at 10:30. So it's like you can kind of wake up and you feel good. And you watch football and all that. So I'm fine with that. I'm fine with the Cowboys as well. And I really do like the primetime game as well. Unfortunately, it was probably a better matchup 3 weeks ago than it is now. So we'll actually see if it does happen as well.
Yeah, I know half of Baltimore's team is seemingly coming down with COVID right now. And I mean, if it doesn't happen, then it might be the best thing that happens for them because, I mean, I think right now the Steelers are going to put a hurting on them. That being said, I agree with you totally. I like the tradition of the Lions always being on Thanksgiving, the Cowboys always being on Thanksgiving. And I like the tradition of having that third game now that is in prime time. So it is a day-long football fest. No matter what time you finish eating, you can always flip on the TV and see a game. And that's always something good for the family to huddle around and be able to see. And again, it's probably the only time all year you really see the Lions on national TV. The Cowboys, they get a ton of national TV coverage, even when they don't deserve it. But, I mean, it's definitely part of Thanksgiving is seeing that game with the Cowboys. And, I mean, It is tradition, and both teams are bad right now. But who knows? Maybe in a couple of years, both teams will be really good, and we won't be upset that we have to see a Lions game tomorrow.
Yeah, it's gonna be interesting this year because both really probably the best team out of the four teams that we like talk about. Really, the Lions are as far as record wise, are actually one of the better teams this year, and they actually do get a very easy kind of easy opponent. But again, nothing's easy in Detroit against Houston, who is coming off a victory against the Patriots. So it's going to be a interesting game. And then you have Cowboys against Redskin or the Washington football team. Sorry, but it's going to be
Get it right, you insensitive.
yes. No, I checked myself as well. I was like, oh snap,
I do it
but
all the time.
yes, and really, if the Eagles lose this game, is going to be a potential first place in the NFC East, which is crazy to think about.
It is. It's just such a sad state of affairs, what's going on there in the NFC East. I mean, once again, it's sad that one of these teams, regardless of the outcome, could be vaulted into a tie for first place. It's just it's terrible out there, the football that they're playing. Although the Cowboys somehow showed up last week and shocked the Vikings in Minnesota, so who knows? Maybe they're turning the corner. The football team is also coming off of a win against the Bengals. So who knows who's worse right now? And it's going to be good to see this toilet bowl play out live on Thanksgiving.
Absolutely, it's going to be fun, and then obviously with the primetime game with the Steelers and Ravens. Again, I said a good matchup 3 weeks ago. Now with the Ravens really kind of falling a little bit, it's really kind of interesting to see if they can kind of ride this ship a little bit and get back into the playoff race now. Because if the season ended today, the Ravens would actually be out of the playoffs right now.
Which is so crazy to think about. I mean, you obviously have Lamar Jackson coming off of this MVP season last year, and to see the way that they've struggled, particularly over the last 3 weeks. I mean, it seems like Tennessee and Derrick Henry just have their number. And, I mean, they were able to beat him in a good overtime game last week. And Derrick Henry is, I think, one of the MVPs of the league. He's gotten that Titans team where into this position of being, if they win this week, division leader.
Yeah, and it's really kind of interesting too, and just seeing like the Ravens really kind of downfall has really been on the defensive side as well. I mean, they got run over by the Patriots 2 weeks ago, and they looked really good for 3 quarters last week, and then Derrick Henry finally took over and said, "I'm Derrick Henry. I'm taking this game over," and he did, and it just felt like the Ravens defense looked hopeless, and they really couldn't do anything, and they got ran over in that fourth quarter.
They certainly did, and now they're facing Pittsburgh, who's just riding this insane wave of momentum. I know a couple of weeks ago you were saying that they were a soft undefeated team, but I mean right now they're looking like a very good undefeated team. I mean they had a little bit of a test last week. The Jaguars are kind of pesky this season. They're willing to put up a fight, but right now the Steelers to me look like a team that could maybe do it.
Yeah, it definitely looks like that way as far as schedule wise as well. I think really Baltimore and I believe Buffalo the fall in a couple of weeks are probably the next two matchups, and really they could probably secure home field advantage by week 13 or 14. It really depends on Kansas City if they falter a little bit. But again, with Kansas City kind of winning some of these games as well, it really is putting the pressure on the Steelers to keep winning and to get that home field advantage, which really doesn't matter, I guess, in a COVID world now. But it's
It
just
doesn't.
maybe they get that home game and they get that bye week for the first for that week of the playoffs.
They certainly would have that inside track at that, and obviously one less game never hurt anybody, especially in this COVID time where you didn't get much of a preseason. Resting up can obviously help you. On top of that, I mean, the Chiefs keep winning these close games, but it doesn't feel like they're quite as dominant as they were a year ago. Yeah, if you give Mahomes the ball with time, he's going to come down and march down the field like he did against the Raiders this week. They're a very good team, but I don't know that they're as dominant as they were a season ago.
No, and really their defense has really kind of taken a step back from last year, and we'll see if maybe they start heating up around December, which that's what happened last year. Their defense really started getting together as far as the team went, but they really depend on Mahomes a lot. Like it really is crazy how much really this Chiefs team, even though they look dominant at times, really depend on Mahomes a lot and this offense to really put points on the board, because really if they didn't have Mahomes, they probably would be maybe a 3 games above 500 team, and then really trying to stave off the Raiders, for that control of the AFC West. But because they had Mahomes, they have a very good record and a very good offense, and offense seemed to be humming, especially this week.
Mahomes just never looks like he's flustered in any way. He just always looks like he is in control of the moment, in control of his demeanor. And I think because of that, his poise is what makes him such a good quarterback. Even when he's in these situations where someone's bearing down on him, and you really see this only with the best quarterbacks, where someone's bearing down on them, they are still able to get out, make the play, and really find a way to always make something happen. That's what makes him so good. And I think that that's why they are such a threat. The Steelers, though, they have Big Ben. He's done it a couple of times before. They are an experienced team that has the potential really to go all the way. And it didn't hurt this year that they had 4 games against the NFC East.
No, and it really helps them as well, and it helps them, going forward as well. That with the Bengals without Joe Burrow, and then they still have to play the Browns, but that's like week 17, and they could have everything locked up by then. So it really wouldn't matter against the Browns as well. And yeah, it helps them play in the NFC East, which I guess it helps anybody, especially with the Browns as well this year. Seeing the record that they have, really, if maybe the NFC East had maybe two or three better teams, maybe the Browns record wouldn't be as good as it is right now.
That's true. They not only are they going to advance a team to the playoffs that shouldn't be in the NFC, they might have advanced the Browns or the Ravens to the playoffs in the AFC when maybe neither one should have been there because they get 4 games against that division.
Yeah, it's crazy to think. It's just the Browns are like one of these quiet 7-3 teams that nobody's really talking about. But the fact that they really haven't been impressive these past 2 games, and really, or the past 3 games actually, they really have not been very good. I guess it's because of the weather and all that, and they're just really not letting Baker basically let him play and all that. So it's really interesting to see that, because they may come in, maybe being like a fourth of maybe like a 5th seed or a 6th seed, and they may be one of the most interesting teams going into that playoffs, and maybe a lot of people are going to pick them to probably lose.
Yeah. They certainly are an interesting team. I mean, they're a team right now that does have momentum. They've been winning. I mean, they haven't been blowing anyone out. They haven't been looking impressive in their wins, but they keep finding a way to win, and that's the important thing. And that's what that franchise has been looking for so long, was finding a way to win. And Baker Mayfield, congratulations to him. He now has the most wins of any quarterback at the Browns home stadium, breaking Big Ben's record. So for 20-plus years now, it seems like, maybe not 20, actually, it's probably about 15 years now, that Big Ben has held the record for most wins at Cleveland Stadium despite playing for the Steelers. So at least now the record for most wins by a quarterback at their stadium is held by someone on their own team.
Yeah, it's crazy to think about that, and just how the long list of bad Browns quarterbacks. I mean, we could probably list them as far as bad AFC East quarterbacks. I mean, with Manziel, Brandon Weeden, Tim Couch, I think
Colt
Jake
McCoy.
Delhomme, Colt McCoy. Oh, gee.
Did they start Brady Quinn at all?
I think Brady Quinn, yes. Spurgeon Wynn.
Oh, wow.
I'm going way back as well. It is just interesting just how bad of a quarterback situation. I mean, we complain about it here in Denver, but the Browns have had it for basically 20 years now. So it's very bad. And I guess, it's just some of these teams, just everything has gone their way this year. Everything has gone their way this year. And I think the Browns are one of these prototypical teams that, they've been losing, losing, losing. And finally they had that season where everything goes right. Everything goes their way, obviously scheduling wise, and then maybe like weather wise. The weather has maybe helped, especially in Cleveland. And yeah, it's really been a very interesting year for the Browns.
It certainly has. They're a very interesting team. I mean, they have talent and positions all across the field. I don't know that they're as talented necessarily to be able to keep up with the Chiefs or the Steelers, but they're a team that really could make things interesting going into this postseason that seems to just find a way to win. And that's what it's all about. And they finally do have a guy in Baker Mayfield who maybe doesn't have as many wins as he does commercials, but he's doing some good things. And once again, he's not blowing up and defeating himself as badly as he was a year ago.
We're talking about the Browns so much the past 2 weeks. What is it about us?
Yeah.
We've talked about the Browns so much. It's just a lot of people.
Well,
I
last week
guess
it was more about the Texans being boneheads as opposed to the Browns being good.
Yeah, that is true. And actually, skipping away from the Browns a little bit, actually, this was a very, very good week as far as really good games and the games that actually lived up to the hype. Obviously, it started with Thursday with Arizona and Seattle living up to the hype, and then the Sunday night game with the Chiefs Raiders that lived up to the hype, and then Monday night, last night, the Rams Bucks game lived up to the hype as well, and then you had really good games as well with the Colts and the Packers game, and then the Cowboys Vikings game was really good. It was just a very, very good week, and then obviously Titans and Ravens lived up to the hype as well. Just really good games that lived up to the hype, and it was a very entertaining week this week for the NFL.
It certainly was. I mean, I didn't get to watch much on Sunday because I actually went to the Broncos-Dolphins game. I actually saw Broncos win. Can you believe it?
You saw Broncos win. You saw a rarity. I mean, you and 5,000 people saw Broncos win.
Exactly, and I mean it was so weird and so surreal being in a stadium with just 5,000 people for a Broncos game. It was weird because I could basically go down there. I parked. I got out of my car. It took me like walking a block to even find someone who was even asking me to charge for parking. It was weird even just seeing so few fans coming in and pouring out of the stadium. Like traffic going into the stadium was so easy. I wish it was like that every time, but in some ways I don't, just because I miss like the fan atmosphere that you get from a game like that. It was so easy to leave the stadium and get out of downtown Denver. It was crazy just how weird it was with so few people there.
Oh, I bet. Did they try to at least make it feel like a Broncos home game as well?
A little bit. It didn't have as much, obviously, with the fan interaction and stuff. And, I mean, they still had a little bit, but not nearly as much playing to the crowd, it felt like, as they would normally. Or maybe because there was less people, it didn't feel like it. But I don't know.
Were you kind of shocked of how well the Broncos played? Because really, other than maybe the Tennessee game and then maybe the Jets game, that felt like the most complete game of the season for the Broncos.
Oh, yeah. Like, honestly, my fiance and I were prepared to leave at halftime just because we thought the Broncos were going to be down by 4 touchdowns at that point. We were going to let her go shop at the merchandise stand there, let her pick out her holiday gifts. And then we were going to just head home or head back to the brewery that we had stopped at before the game, just because we thought the Broncos had no chance in this game. The Dolphins were red hot. The Broncos were slumping. The Dolphins' defense had been terrorizing opposing quarterbacks. And even on the first drive or second drive of the day, Drew Lock just tucks a terrible interception. But the Broncos' defense rallied. They looked really good. Defensively, Justin Simmons is a monster, and they were really able to give Tua a very hard time in that game on Sunday. And, I mean, it was fun to see. It was fun to be able to gloat to the Miami Dolphins fans in the stadium because there were quite a few Dolphins fans there, including ones that were sitting with us, and so it was nice to be able to gloat to them.
It really did feel like a complete game. What really was sad as well is that they left 10 points on the board. You know, obviously you're a fan of aggressive calling. I'm one of these people. It's like take the points, take the field goal. I think Vic Fangio really is a bad game manager. Like he just does not understand. It's like really just like kick the field goal. Like it's funny because I was watching the game with my friend. I'm getting so mad. I'm like, kick the basically kick the freaking field goal, and it's just. It really was just so maddening because it's just look at the defense. The defense is playing lights out right now. It's like take the points, keep extending the lead and all that. And the way the defense was playing, and then obviously Melvin Gordon fumbling the football at the 1 yard line. Really, and it could have been one of those those backbreaking plays as well, and would have been just a backbreaking play. And then obviously Justin Simmons saved basically Melvin Gordon's behind.
He certainly did. Justin Simmons needs to be getting almost a new car from Melvin Gordon at this point for how badly he pulled Gordon's butt out of the fire, because if that fumble would have cost the Broncos the game, no one in Denver would have liked to have had Melvin Gordon on their team. I think he was a guy that they didn't even need to sign in the first place. But on top of that, if he ends up costing you a game like this, that would have been the final nail in the coffin for Melvin Gordon. Thankfully, Justin Simmons comes up with the big play, keeps Melvin Gordon's job going forward. But, I mean, at the end of the day, I don't see why this is a split back situation with Melvin Gordon and Phillip Lindsay. I don't. I think that Phillip Lindsay needs to be your primary back. Melvin Gordon needs to be in there only in an emergency, kind of like Royce Freeman was last year. Melvin Gordon is not a game changer anymore. He's not.
Actually, really, minus the Jets game because Lindsey was hurt. This was actually probably Melvin Gordon's probably best game as a Bronco.
And he almost
so
cost him the game.
And he almost cost him the game. I know, and it's just kind of maddening because it was just like, my God, like he was running like really well, like he was finding holes. It felt like he was explosive. Like where was this explosiveness all season? It was really kind of crazy to think about. Maybe he actually is healthy again for the first time since probably week 1. And it was just maddening because it's just like, God, he fumbled like, it was just so maddening because it would have been 27-13 and really would have brought the game out of reach. And really, and it was great too because they had the 3 and out, and then Fitzpatrick came in, led him to a field goal drive, but then the offense really drove down the field a little bit, and really they should have pounced it in, and then and maybe have extended that lead and made that game maybe a little more impressive than what it was.
Yeah, he definitely made the game interesting. I don't think he was finding any holes that Phillip Lindsay didn't find. I think that, again, looking at it, the Dolphins' defense is just one you can run on. And because of that, I think that's why Gordon was finding holes. Phillip Lindsay was finding holes as well and being able to bust a couple of long runs here or there. And like I said, until Gordon proves to me that he's back, he's a game changer and he can hang on to the ball, I think you got to stick with Phillip Lindsay as your primary back.
Yeah, I got to give credit to the offensive line. They really actually played really well. And I tweeted this out actually on Sunday as well. It's just I'm really afraid this is a typical contract year for Garrett Bowles. It's like it's one of these prove it type of deals where it's like he's looking all world. I mean, he was looking maddening. He had an awesome pancake block against the Dolphins and was he really looked like a man possessed on that field. And I'm just like so worried that this is just one of those typical contract years. He's playing for a contract, and then once he gets it, he's going to turn back to that pumpkin again instead of a fairy tale.
He probably is. I mean, he's playing great. He's made me eat my words because I was as critical of him as anyone was probably in the Mile High City last year. He was so bad and just really hurt the team a lot with stupid penalties, so much so that you didn't even think that he comprehended the game. Now it's a very different Garrett Bowles. He's performing very well. And, I mean, it's interesting to see, is this what we can expect from him going forward? Because, honestly, if I was in charge, I would have cut him at the end of last season. So for him to come back and do what he's been doing is really impressive. But like you said, I hope this is the new Garrett Bowles and not a version of Garrett Bowles that we're only getting for this one season.
Yeah, I'm really kind of nervous. Again, we kind of talked about it during like the beginning of the season before we started this podcast. We kind of talked about Garrett Bowles, and we kind of talked about with like no fans in the stands or like minimal fans in the stands. You and I both kind of talked. It was like maybe this helps Bowles a lot because then he won't get booed all the time if they call holding on 72 and all that. And sure enough, it really has come. It has come true with this fact. Hopefully next year. You know, hopefully next year it doesn't really hurt his psyche with fans in the stands again.
So what you're saying is basically he's an empty arena all-star.
Yes, he's an empty arena all-star. He's great in the bubble as of right now. And it's going to be interesting as well, seeing, especially with like these rookies that are performing well, especially Justin Herbert. I know everybody's talking about with like how well Herbert's playing as well. Let's see next year, since the Chargers don't have a fan base and probably will have fans in the stands next year. And when they play the Broncos, the Raiders, and the Chiefs, when the fans are going to be, probably 45, 55 for the other team. And it really feels like a home game for the other team as well. Let's see how Herbert's psyche is going to do well on that end.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. I mean, I think right now he definitely looks like a franchise quarterback. But once again, will fans in the stands be able to rattle him? I don't know. It's going to be I think this is a tough season, honestly, to be a rookie for, because you're not even going to be able to get used to facing a hostile crowd until year 2.
Yeah, and again, it could help because they have a year of NFL on their resume, and maybe that will help them a little bit. I think fans may actually hurt Justin Herbert if I really think so, especially when they're playing the AFC West as well, and it's going to be a lot of Broncos, Chiefs, and Raiders fans. So I'm really kind of curious what he's going to be like, and he's going to be like having to use the silent count for 16 games out of the year.
I think he's good. I think he's going to be good, and I think that they had some bad injuries earlier in the year too, and they've had some throughout the year. I think they are, despite the record, a very good team, and a team that could eventually get to a point where they could be competitive next year.
Yeah, they're a very good team. Herbert is a great quarterback. I love him. I have him on fantasy, so he's been really a help for me, and he's actually been really good. And we'll see. I'm kind of curious what next year does for these quarterbacks.
I am too. It's gonna be interesting. Like I said, it was such a surreal experience to be there. This is the first sporting event that I've attended without fans or without truly having fans in the stands, and it was so weird, so weird.
Oh, I bet I bet it feels weird. To be honest, I don't think I've been to a sporting event since March, and I've
Right.
worked it. So it's crazy to think about it. It's like, wow, I haven't been to a sporting event in 9 months.
I mean, I had worked a CSU Pueblo home golf tournament and a CSU Pueblo home swim meet, but like to be at a Broncos game with 5,000 people, it felt insane. It felt like a Denver Outlaws game. It felt like the stadium was full of, I mean, like I said, and a lot of people who kept their seats on Sunday were Dolphins fans. So it felt like the home field advantage, which for the Broncos is normally a big deal, wasn't a big deal this past weekend.
Yeah, and uh, well, going back as well with like that home field advantage, I think it helps too with like the Broncos as well with like Miami. It was sort of cold. Um, it was sort of cold, so that I think that helped. And I think Tua has never played in altitude before, so he's always played with sea level or below sea level. And I think I saw a couple of his passes, and he had some like wide open people, and he tried like a touch pass, and he ends up overthrowing them because of maybe the altitude of him throwing the football, and it feels like a little bit different as well. And I think maybe that rattled him a little bit. It's like, what just happened? Like I feel like I throw it perfectly, but who knows?
At no point in that game did he look comfortable. Honestly, a defensive holding bailed him out of a potential another interception by Justin Simmons on their drive when they took over in Broncos territory following the lock pick. So it's kind of a weird situation for him. I don't know if it was the altitude. The Broncos were also getting a lot of pressure on him, but he definitely looked rattled there, and I think that's part of the reason why you saw them go back to Fitzmagic there in the fourth quarter.
He did. He looked very, very uncomfortable really from I think that interception really phased him a little bit. The defensive holding with the interception. I know he went on to throw a touchdown pass, but again, that was just because of just crazy athleticism by Devontae Parker. I mean, it really wasn't a good throw as well. It was just a great athletic play by Devontae Parker. So I think that interception really rattled him because it really was a bad interception. And eventually he got bailed out by a holding call, which really was a really ticky-tacky call. I know you probably didn't see it in the stands, but I saw it on TV. It very was a ticky-tacky call on that holding. It really shouldn't have been defensive holding.
I mean, yeah, like you said, I mean, obviously in the stands they try not to show you these kinds of things, but yeah, I mean, it did seem ticky-tacky on the replay. And then once again, Tua I'm not sold on him. I think Herbert is a better quarterback. I think Burrow is a better quarterback. Nothing I saw from him the other day, and maybe it was obviously the altitude getting to him. I don't know, but he did not look like, again, even what I've seen him play so far in the other 2 games he started, he does not look like the type of franchise quarterback to me.
And it's actually the underlining of the Dolphins season. Their kind of Achilles heel is really the offensive line. Their offensive line really isn't that good. And it showed really on Sunday. The fact that really the Broncos really had pressure all day, and this mass unit of a defensive line really got a lot of pressure. And I swear to God, if Malik Reed played the Dolphins every week, he'd be a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Absolutely. You wonder what a Shaq Barrett or even if Von Miller would have played in this game, if he'd have been healthy, what that would have looked like.
It would have been interesting. Hopefully next year we'll have a healthy defense again, and it's very interesting. Who knows what this Broncos season is going to entail? You know, there are going to be some changes next year, so we will see.
All right. Did you have we should switch over to college football too, give that a little bit of a chat as well. I don't know who thought that Ohio State was going to roll up that Indiana team by 3 touchdowns. That team just knows how to fight. They know how to play defense, and they gave the Buckeyes a good fight on Saturday.
They did. That is probably going to be the only game we'll probably talk about because really there wasn't really that much good going on as far as everything. And yeah, Indiana gave. And they fought back too. It was Ohio State really had a comfortable lead going into the 4th quarter, but Indiana, just fought back and said, you know what, we're going to fight back, and they did, and it was crazy, and it felt like Indiana really shot themselves in the foot as well. Mm-hmm. With the interception, with the fumble, and then they had some backbreaking offsides penalties and false start penalties. So that really was really a game Indiana could have won. And yeah, they made Fields looked uncomfortable, even though the stats don't say otherwise. But really, Fields really looked uncomfortable in that game, and he just did not look like the Justin Fields that we come to know.
He certainly didn't. Credit to that defense for making some plays, making some interceptions, forcing some turnovers. And, I mean, especially in the first half, it looked like Indiana was a little bit rattled. Like they weren't ready for this big of a moment against this big of an opponent. And I think that's going to come with experience. I think if you see this Indiana team again next year or even further down the line this year, they're going to be more ready for a game like that. And they're going to be one of those teams that experience, like you see it in like the NBA or the playoffs in other leagues where like in the playoffs, their first year a team gets kind of rattled. They aren't able to win. But then the next year is when they're really dangerous. And that's kind of what we saw even with the Chiefs last year was that dangerousness finally and that war of attrition finally coming through. Are there any other games that jumped out to you this weekend on college football Saturday?
Not really. Maybe Cincinnati's quest to maybe get into that 4th spot in the college football playoff. They actually UCF came out and really punched them in the mouth to start the game, and they looked and Cincinnati came back and really kind of really took over that game as well. And yeah, the American just giving us a quality game after quality game each week.
It certainly is. I think Cincinnati should, even without question, be that 4th team. Yeah, Clemson lost to Notre Dame, but they lost. So at the end of the day, I think you gotta recognize an unbeaten team for doing what they're doing. It's so tough, especially with parity in the American nowadays, to go through it unbeaten because you got a lot of good teams in there. You got a lot of interesting opponents in Navy. UConn isn't much, but I mean SMU, Memphis, UCF. We got a lot of these teams. Even Tulsa's ranked now. So you got a lot of good teams in that American, and I think really you could make the case that the American, especially since Cincinnati has had to play so many games this year, deserves a bid over conferences that haven't had to play as much this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think Cincinnati, if they go undefeated, I mean, their resume has really been impressive so far, and they really have beaten the teams that have been in front of them as well. And I think they beat probably the two better teams of the conference in SMU and UCF on the road as well. So that's got to be style points as well with the committee. And we'll see it tonight with the unveiling of the first rankings as well. So we'll see where they're ranked as well. And same goes for Northwestern. I mean, they really had really it felt like an old school Big Ten game with that as well. I kind of watched that and I was just like, man, this is boring and all that. Like, but again, it feels like Northwestern is like a bad luck Brian meme. You know, it's like they're finally good. They have like an undefeated season. They look like a team that could probably compete in the Big Ten, and they look really well. And they can't have fans in the stands, so I mean, it's interesting with that. But yeah, well, this will be interesting, and I hope Cincinnati gets the nod actually over Northwestern. If you want my honest opinion, I think Cincinnati deserves some credit as well. And Luke Fickell, I mean, I don't know why he isn't on like anybody's like radar as far as with like coaches or something like that. Maybe he may be on the radar for Michigan if Michigan does end up firing Harbaugh, which I think that's what Michigan should do. Should go after, try to get Luke Fickell. He's done an impressive job over at Cincinnati as well, and I think he's done a more impressive job than Hugh Freeze has done over at Liberty.
He certainly has, and I mean we've seen Hugh Freeze get that opportunity at a big school before. We haven't seen it from Fickell getting that really big job. I mean Hugh Freeze used to have the Ole Miss job. He's had some big chances at some big schools and hasn't gotten it done. So I mean, again, I think that Hugh Freeze's opportunity is coming, but I think that if you are going after a coach right now, then yeah, Fickell's definitely the way to go. I think Northwestern is one of those teams now that they control their own destiny. So they will likely be the one that advances to the Big Ten championship game unless they shoot themselves in the foot before then. And then if they beat Ohio State, then their case is kind of proven at that point, I would say.
Absolutely, it really would throw a wrench into the playoff, and it actually may hurt Cincinnati's chances as well. So they're really praying for, I think Cincinnati's really praying for maybe Northwestern to maybe kind of fall off a little bit, and then praying for maybe another Notre Dame victory over Clemson as well.
Or yeah, something like that. I mean, I think Cincinnati is just one of those teams that deserves a shot. I think that really, even especially this year, since let's face it, all bowl games are really meaningless anyway at this point in life. Let's just at this point open it up to 8 teams this year. I think 8 teams is where it should be anyway, but let's do 8 teams this year.
I agree. They really want to expand, but I don't think they're going to do it this year. I would love to see it happen, but it is not going to happen. Hopefully, in the next few years, we'll have 8 teams rather than 4.
Yeah, it just doesn't make much sense to me, especially for this year when you could have Ohio State in there with playing 6 games and like beating up on both Michigan schools a bunch of times.
Yeah, that's the thing that may actually hurt Ohio State going in to this round is really their schedule has not been very impressive going in. I mean, really, other than like the Indiana victory, that's been really their only good team, and I think like the remaining team schedules are really terrible going into this into the second part of the season, and it just really like they really lucked out schedule wise going in and having Michigan and Michigan State being bad as well. So it's going to be interesting how the committee sees Ohio State.
Yeah, I don't think it's any coincidence that it worked out that their schedule is easy either. But I mean, I think it's like you said. I'm sorry, it's soft. It's a soft schedule, and I mean, even Cincinnati, I think, is gonna get there beating more important people, more impressive people than Ohio State is with their one win over Indiana, unless they are able to show something big in the Big Ten championship game.
Yeah, if UCF and SMU continue to be well, and again with Tulsa as well, and they'll see like, oh, all these ranked teams, and Cincinnati beat them, or these really high record teams compared to like Michigan, who may be 2-8 or 2-6, and same with like Michigan State, they could be probably 1-7, and that really could vault maybe Cincinnati over Ohio State, which would be very crazy, and I would very much would enjoy that.
I would too, but Ohio State, it's like, yeah, you beat Nebraska. That was impressive 20 years ago.
Yeah, it's like Nebraska and like Penn State has really just fallen off the cliff. It's like really,
Right.
again, we'll look back at this season. It's like really their only impressive win was against Indiana, and they had to squeak by to beat Indiana as well.
Right, exactly. That's the only point I'm making about it. Did you have a bonehead of the week?
I gotta. Oh yes, I do have a bonehead play of the week. It has to do with Virginia. So Virginia, they let a touchdown, and then they had like a kickoff in which the guy took a knee as well, instead of maybe like returning it as well. And then they're backed up at their own goal line. And this is against Abilene Christian. They were basically at like the 1 yard line, and they decided to do a wide receiver throwback. So they threw it to the wide receiver, and obviously Abilene Christian snuffs it out, and they stuff it out and they stop it, and it's just like, oh, just a bonehead play, and it's just thankfully the score was high enough where, oh my God, where it really didn't matter, but it's still like a bonehead play. Like, it's just like, save these trick plays when you play against somebody that's good as well, instead of somebody that's bad, because then you'll know when the trick play is happening. And really is a mistake you see with coaches going in.
Yeah, I'd agree with that one. I mean, that's terrible. A wide receiver pass should never be done in your own end zone anyway, but that's just adding to the ridiculousness of it.
Yes. Do you have a bonehead play?
Let's see, my bonehead play of the week. I mean, like I said, unfortunately, I didn't get to watch as much as I wish I would have this week. So, I mean, it's really tough for me to say that I had one. I watched the Broncos game, and I watched Indiana, Ohio State, and so there really wasn't a whole lot of games that I got to see that had those kind of bonehead plays.
One I just thought of as well, and I tweeted it to you. The Nebraska, the Illinois punter, where Nebraska basically, goes into like a return mode all the way, and like the Illinois punter figures it out and just runs for a first down, and just really, I mean, just a special teams gaffe when it comes to Nebraska again. And we seem to be talking about Nebraska a lot. Just really the glory days are gone as of right now for Nebraska.
But what a heads-up play by that punter. I don't know that I would call that a bonehead play by Nebraska as much as I would call that a great play by that punter. That punter, smart decision. He's like, okay, no one's coming near me. I'll run there too. I love it. I love a punter that can recognize the situation, go out there, get the first down, and get you that extra yardage and another chance to maybe get a little bit more points on the board.
Yeah, and obviously it helped because Illinois really dominated that game as well, and just, I mean, Nebraska's looking, they should not have worn those jerseys. I know it's honored like the black shirts and all that, but really, I mean, those are crappy uniforms. Get rid of them. Stay with the red and white. Really, if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Exactly.
As far as with jerseys.
Exactly. Don't switch it up if your team's been good.
Absolutely.
All right. Did you have a meme of the week?
I do not. I saw some memes, but really, like nothing too that like jumped out where I'm like, oh my God, I want to watch this, or this is funny. So, do you have a meme of the week?
I know I did. Let me look through my memes and figure it out. There were definitely some good ones.
Such as?
I mean, the ones with the Raiders quarterback Derek Carr, where he's like looking all evil, are pretty funny. Like they have him one where he's looking like Sid from Toy Story, And then they have another one where he looks like actually the Undertaker, who we're going to talk about here in a few minutes, with
Yes.
Paul Bear like in his eyes rising up.
It's weird. What does he
That was
do?
funny.
Does he do eyeshadow before games or
Yes,
something
he
like
does.
that? Or is it just like all natural or something like that? Like, I'm surprised it's not smearing like it was in like in semi-pro. You know, they tried that tactic
Exactly.
and it's not smearing. You know, because really, I mean that helmet is really hot. Uh, really, in that jersey and that helmet, it's really hot. And like football is really, you sweat a lot in football. I know it's a dome stadium. I guess I just don't know what it's like playing in a dome stadium. So maybe it's
But
a
I
little
know
bit
in
different.
Vegas it's hot.
Yeah, and it's Vegas, and it's like I know it's a dome stadium, but really, shouldn't he be like sweating? Or shouldn't that makeup be like smearing? Instead, he looks like a crying goth girl.
Exactly. He looks like an emo kid. But my favorite one is the one, I don't know if you saw this, where Cam Newton's pregame attire is tweeted out with like a side-by-side picture of the Yodely guy from The Price is Right. And it looks almost exactly like the Yodely guy from The Price is Right.
Yes, whoever
That one's
thought of
great.
that was fantastic.
That one's my meme of the week for sure.
It's very interesting, and it's so funny because it really makes you think about prices, right? Like, oh, that, and you're just like, wow, whoever thought of that is a genius.
It was a perfect meme. Cam Newton, ridiculous fashion sense anyway, but yeah, he really did pull off the Yodely guy look this week.
Absolutely. Oh, and another great game from this past week. Obviously, Houston, New England was a very, very good game as well. And you know, we're seeing the end of the Patriots dynasty finally. So
I
you know,
know.
maybe they go back to futility a little bit, and you know, they go back to like the days when, you know, of like Bledsoe, when they were okay, but they weren't the best team in the NFL for all those years.
Yeah, if they never win another game in my lifetime, I'd be happy with that. But
Oh, it's just funny. I mean, it's just like the bipolarness sometimes. You know, obviously, I listen to a lot of Bill Simmons, and you know, last week he was so excited over the win against the Ravens. It's like we're back, this is it. And the loss to Houston this week, and it's like it's so bleak. Like it's just like screw this team. You know, this team stinks.
hey, at least I'm sure they have another game against the Jets, right?
True, and they could win that.
They sure can. I'm sure the Jets will try to tank that one for Lawrence. So at this point, I'm sure that's what's going to happen. That being said, I mean, obviously, it was a great week of games. Hopefully, we're treated to this another great week of games this weekend, especially since I'll be by my TV to watch more of them. So I can't wait. Hopefully, another great week of games coming up this week.
Absolutely, I'm ready. Let's do it. I'm ready for the games.